Embodiment, Gender and Aging. Rosy Martin is an artist photographer, psychological therapist, workshop leader, lecturer and writer. She explores the relationship between photography, memory, identities and unconscious processes using performative self-portraiture, still life photography and video. From 1983, with Joe Spence, she pioneered reenactment phototherapy, which explores the psychic and social construction of identities through embodiment. She has exhibited internationally and published widely since 1985. Her practice explores issues including gender, sexualities, aging, class, desire, memory, location, family dynamics, shame, bereavement, loss, grief, and reparation. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have you here.
Am I allowed to stand? Are you going to hear me if I stand? You want me to sit? It's painful.
Yeah, the seats. Would you like
It's okay. No. Hi. Forward. Oh God, which one did I want to do? This one? Sure. Spiel. Sorry, little spiel. As a means of exploring histories that have been hidden, disavowed or denied, I've worked collaboratively in therapeutic dialogue to unearth and explore previously suppressed feelings. These complex emotions and societal concerns, that underpin the distress and disquiet then became the starting points for performative reenactments in phototherapy. And I initially developed this way of working 40 years ago with Joe Spence. So we start often with the family album and then explore. So we start with personal narrative and then explore the issues and discontents and pains that any individual inhabits. Quite interestingly, this has been rediscovered recently through an exhibition at the Tate in Britain called, not called Revolting Women, called Women in Revolt, but which looks at women's practice from the 70s and 80s. So this one was dug up from actually a friend's place in New York where it sat since it had last been seen, sort of 25 years ago. And it's about transforming the suit. What does a lesbian look like? So in this work, I'm looking at the way that gender and performance are kind of encoded and playing with the notion of what does an individual look like and what does it mean to be defined. Oh, sorry, I don't like this toy. And I started with the wonderful quote from Havelock Ellis, which is a definer from the 1890s. And ends with, she shows therefore nothing of that sexual shyness and engaging air of weakness and dependence, which are an invitation to men. I recommend the whole quote, actually, if you've got time to read it. Anyway, the idea was to look at what it means to be a lesbian. This was in the 80s, when things were quite prescribed. There were certain ways of being that you were supposed to occupy. And I wanted to play with this. So what we're actually talking about is gender as performance, which in a sense hadn't been theorized so much, but was definitely enacted on the street. I'll get used to this in a minute. So we start with the butch, which kind of played on the image from Brassai, Paris in the 30s, if you know the work. Moved into this playing with have a look at Ellis's definition of a masculinized femininity, sort of leaning on mantelpieces and with a preference for cigars. And then the alter ego, the woman you could never be good enough for, the politically correct, who wears a lot of badges and wore that check shirt and kind of told you how you were supposed to be. Quite hard to live up to, she was. Most of us knew one, I think, in those days. Mother of three, in those days closeted, because if she'd been out, she would have risked losing her children. And the femme, and again, I played with notions of femininity even in this one, so she's acquiescent and then she's being strong. So and this is all about playing with how we present, how we code, what it means to be, and what it means to disrupt. There was a nasty piece. If I sit back, you can't hear me, can you? I need to get comfortable. There was a very nasty piece of legislation that was put forward in 1980 in the UK, which was basically banning the promotion of homosexuality. And I made this work, and I took the words that were spoken by the members of Parliament in discussion in Parliament. So this was things like pervert, disease, evil, and sick. And I took the words that my mother said to me when I came out to her, which were, it makes my flesh creep, justifies, wrong, unnatural. So these are very pejorative terms, and what I was looking at is what it means to have such ideas projected upon one, as a form of projective identification, what it means to carry this much hatred. And we've been talking about many different kinds of oppressions over this series of talks. And in a way, this was about embodying what it's like to be the subjected to that kind of hatred. And hopefully makes visible to an audience what people are doing when they put their negative projections onto another. So it was an intentionally contesting piece of work. Oh, sorry, I'll get used to this a minute. And then I broke free, because of course one must break free, because it's phototherapy, because it's transformation. Don't stay in that bad place. But I made this image very much as a political image and got it out and about in many exhibitions and places I could. So it was very much using a personal practice as a political statement. Oh, sorry. Which is forward and which is back? No. Okay, now I do phototherapy workshops, and I go around and ask people to bring in their family albums. And one thing that struck me when I was looking at other people's family albums was this endless, it was pretty endless. All these photos where people looked like film stars, like copies of film stars. They'd obviously gone to photo studios and asked to look like whoever was the film star of the day. Yeah. But of course they don't quite get right. So in this series of 8 pictures, which I just made as self-portraits, I was kind of playing with that attempt to occupy an idealized other, film star, other. And of course going through gender in the process of doing that. So again, it's about performing gender. From hopefully you can read my intended source material here. and also how one doesn't quite make it, because the important thing is actually not to get it right, but get it almost right, and this whole desire and discontent about the way that people perform in front of the camera, I found interesting, and also that you really can't code gender that easily. And of course, family album pictures are fascinating because you find actually a lot of gay men in there, but they wouldn't have been known as such at the time, probably because of the way society was hiding identities. I suppose when I became menopausal, when I turned 50, I started to think that aging was an area that wasn't looked at adequately, was not being considered amongst the many identities that we take seriously. And I worked with a woman called Kay Goodrich, and we confronted the stereotypes of aging women, which suggest decline, loss of sexuality, and redundancy. The work is about the unruly, carnivalesque, even grotesque body, which refuses to be ignored. By using irony, humour, and transgression, cliches, for example, mutton dressed as lamb, are subverted. And it's really about desire and discontent mirrored in the changing room. Basically, we went and chose a lot of inappropriate clothes. And the young woman was a bit horrified when we were in the communal changing room, and she showed us off to one side, which was a gift, because we were in a really tiny space. And so what you're seeing, you even see the photographer in some of these, it's incredibly intimately crowded, but what that created was this wonderful opportunity to explore what you normally would discount. Desire and discontent in the changing room, it's enough. And also we tried to look at ways of before and after. So by using, I think it was probably artificial light and then flash, we got this effect of the sharp image obviously is me, old, with whitish hair, and the faded image is much more like when I was younger because the softness and the red hair that I used to have. So it's this kind of notion of can we layer up before and after? How do we explore aging? How do we take the risk to play with aging? We did all kinds of things, like a striptease even. You can find it online if you're really desperate. You can. I haven't brought it up, but this was gallery work, and I spent a lot of time researching the way that aging is represented in culture. And these are a couple of horrible examples. The text projected upon the body challenged the inscriptions of medical, psychoanalytic, and cultural discourses. So, on the left, we have Dr. Rubin telling us that the vagina begins to shrivel, the breasts atrophy, sexual desire disappears, and it goes on and it's worse. Which was projected upon my body in a kind of, oh God, I'm going to blank. It's what happens when you get older. German, anyway, he does these beautiful nudes, and they're kind of very elegant, but I'm blanking on my referent. Anyway, my referent. And the other one, one on the left, is using a quote from Freud, and I'll choose a few choice words from it. Writers of comedy and satirists have in all ages directed their invectives against the old dragon into which the charming girl, the loving wife, and tender mother have been transformed. And I'll let you read that image, but I'm sure you can read it. position of the fist, I think. So what are we doing? We're really engaging with, performing, challenging this discourse around aging, which is so pejorative. But also took the quote from Irigaray, which gives you a bit more space, but she's talking about playing with mimesis is thus for a woman to try to recover the place of her exploitation by discourse without allowing herself simply to be reduced by it. Okay, that's giving us a bit of a move. And then the one on the left, right, your right, my left. Yeah. It's from Barbara Walker, who's a feminist, who says it may be that the witch's evil eye was only the eye from which the scales had fallen. So I hope you get that I'm moving through different theoretical approaches to aging to try and challenge what it might be to occupy this aging body. Okay, change in mood. Well, I got older. So what could be quite a distanced and fascinated approach to aging began to be more of an embodied one. And I ended up being a carer for my mother, which is hard work, very hard work. I didn't put myself down for sainthood. I said this to one of my mum's drop-in carers as her dementia days stretched to months, then years, to express the sense of commitment to a belief that I had to be there for her, ease her suffering, interpret and intercede in the world for her, make everything better whilst knowing I would finally fail. When all resources seem to have been used up, even more is needed. The Marian blue saint image reflects society's view, which is kind of, oh, very nice, you're a saint, aren't you wonderful? Words said in passing, I assure you, no support offered, just very good, dear. Very good, dear. Well, white angels express the anger, despair, grief, frustration, and resignation. I reconnected to those complex, myriad, conflicting, ambivalent emotions to try and make visible what it meant and how it felt to be my mother's carer, the myths and realities. Loving, generous, dutiful, exhausting, long-suffering, yet unacknowledged. Now, there's a whole debate around care these days, which I think was prompted partly by COVID, but it's often still, I think, not seen as a complex enough subject. Because care, yes, we want to give care, we want to be caring, but we don't really care for the carers. So, okay, it gets worse. I don't know if I should have included this, but I did. And what it's actually saying is post-operation, no one cares for the carers. So this is me after my knee operation, and I did not go to the ball. Now, I still don't know whether this is speaking to an audience, because I haven't shown this before. But it was a bit about putting on a brave face, but also the sort of the misery of abandonment. But, it's a bit grey. It's not grey, actually. It's a bit more miserable than my work normally is. It's a bit too close to the bone, possibly. I'll see what you say afterwards. To lighten it up a little, I'm working now with a collaborator called Verity Worsted, and we did a whole series where we got lots of grey clothes, because grey, taupe is the colour. Beige. I I don't wear beige, so it didn't go into my head. Beige is the colour that, you know, old people are supposed to wear. So you kind of fade into the background, I think. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to fade into the background. And we tried on all these clothes, and yet in the end we ended up we ended up with this pairing where we're actually both wearing my mum's vest. So it's something kind of comfy and cozy and kind of accepting. But we're also looking at having older bodies. Verity's 20 years younger than me, but she's hit that outrageous ages stage, basically. Yeah. But then we looked at what one would really consider the not to be acknowledged. Actually was taking close-ups. We did a whole series. The question really was how mysteriously could we show our bodies so the viewer would be uncertain as to what they were looking at. These are acts of defamiliarization, making strange. It's a kind of challenge. But the one that I suppose gets it, oh, bugger. Sorry, I'm used to a Mac. You know what? You have your own toy at home, you know how to play with it. This was the one that kind of did it. In an act of making strange, the aging woman's body becomes monstrous feminine, the crone or the enormously powerful body of the mother as viewed by her tiny baby. When enlarged, this close-up study of flesh becomes like an aerial view of landscape. The initial discomfort felt then shifts to wonder at the folds, valleys, and hills of a real fleshy body, and an awareness of just how ordinary, commonplace, and ubiquitous real lived-in flesh is. And I showed this enormous last year at Photo London. And I think it is a confronting image when it's big. But it's just a body. And this is really recent. This is stuff I've been doing the last couple of weeks, which was to, I said to Verity, what would it be like to wear each other's bodies? So we did a series of ourselves naked, which was difficult. And then I had this idea of, well, I'll show you the pose. Yeah, of posing the torso minus arms, so it becomes very sculptural. And then printing this on silk. And then we're kind of wearing each other's bodies. And what was interesting was the middle one, I think I'm wearing Verity, but we didn't even know for a while. Which I find fascinating, the way that one can transform an object, a representation, and distort it. And this is work in progress. It's new, literally just done last week, and I kind of wanted to share it with this audience, because there's nothing like getting feedback, and I don't know if it's working. But the whole point of trying to work on a subject that people don't really want to know about is how to make it engaging enough and yet challenging enough. And I think that's a theme that runs through all the papers at the conference, because we're all being a bit like, you know, it's time we looked at this. Images around gender, around race, around decolonization, these are all really, ecology, these are all really, really important things. But then we also have to do it in a way that the audience will be open to. And if you're too like that, or too, you lose it. And I'll end with a video. Almost forgot my video. Where is she? Come on, in video. She's there. Oh, there she is. Have you pressed play, or do I need to? Here, playing with the poor woman's facelift prompts questions. What if we valued wrinkles? What if we searched each morning for new wrinkles as a sign of beauty, as opposed to turning away in disgust, horror, disbelief, even despair? Can our images begin to reveal an acceptance of the realities of aging, facing up to the capacity to express a range of emotions and communicate subtly, rather than having this ironed out to a conforming smoothness? Thank you.